if you can get someone in your life who loves you to help you hack yourself, to get that I care about my health, I love my health, I want to have the idea to live in a healthy way for a long time, get somebody to help you get that kernel, that little nugget of identity, of ego that is health hacking, and that will grow. You'll start to see little things in your environment all over the place that will start to corroborate and bolster this feeling of this identity of I care about my health, I love myself, and all that good stuff.
Welcome to the Hacker Noon podcast. I'm your host, Trent Lipinski. In this episode, we sit down with Casey Fenton for part 2. In the first episode, we discussed ego hacking, so please make sure to check out that episode. But this episode is focused on biohacking and life extension. So if you're interested in health, this is an amazing episode, so stay tuned.
Hey hacker, sorry to interrupt this great podcast. It's David Smook, founder and CEO of Hacker Noon, and we're raising money for the first time, and we're doing it from the people. If you want to buy shares in Hacker Noon, visit hackernoonshares.com. Help us make the best place for tech professionals to publish.
So I want to jump into another topic that I know you're also really interested in, and that's biohacking.
Yeah.
So you've done quite a bit of research on how to live longer, how to be healthy.
Yeah.
And you've actually hacked your own body to be able to feel more youthful, have more energy, and feel better yourself. Can you kind of like maybe start with why you got into this and what you're doing to improve your life?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I grew up and my mother's a naturopathic doctor, so I kind of was around the idea of vitamins and supplements, and you can improve your health and doing so in a way that's like not necessarily Western medicine, but maybe some other ways, right? So that was kind of, it's been on my mind, but I'm very science-based. Like I just am super has to have causally connected, and that must make sense, and there must be research that backs this up, and if not, then I must be very clear I'm making a jump here or something like that. So in this talk, I want to be pretty clear on that stuff too. But I first got into it because my father almost died. My father had stage 4 cancer, throat cancer, almost died, had chemo and radiation, all that stuff. So in that, I started to study cancer. How does cancer work? And it's funny because cancer and the science around cancer and the science around age extension and longevity is very similar. You have cells, you want them to be behaving well, you want them to live a long time. You don't want them to oxidize and die. You don't want them to mutate and go rogue, things like this, right? So that's what really got me into it. I said, oh my God, there is so much here that I can see that the age extension longevity centers that you go pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to, this stuff is actually available to anyone, and it does work. So it's a matter of time before we're going to start to really see that. I'm 40 years old today. I just turned 40 a few months ago, and I've been doing some tests. You can test your telomeres, the length of your telomeres. We'll get into that in a second, what that is. Yeah. But I was a couple of years ago, I was the average age of about a 27-year-old person, and now I'm a 24-year-old person.
Yeah. And you're actually 40.
And I'm actually 40. Yeah. I was born 40 years ago. Yeah.
So
there's biological age at stake here. There's general health. So there's a bunch of different things. Yeah.
Can you explain what a telomere is if someone hasn't heard of that before?
Sure, absolutely. There's a great book called The Telomere Effect, just came out a couple of years ago. Highly recommend that book. And it will basically explain it. I'll do it in a very, very simple way. In your cell, in every cell, there's some DNA, right? And the DNA is constantly used by the cell to do different functions, like it's code. You're running this code, and it does creates proteins, or it does whatever it does. And so in running that code, it has to split it apart and bring it back together. Split it apart, bring it back together. But how does it know where to put it back together? It's the ends of the DNA that have these capsids, these base pairs of repeating sequences that help line it up. But it turns out it does another thing too. The longer that little capsid, that ends of the shoelace, ends of your DNA, the longer it is, that means you're younger. If it's shorter, it means you're older. And it's your cell's way of keeping track of how old it is in relation to all the cells that came before it. So imagine you're making a copy of your face on a copy machine. You make a copy, it looks all right. You make a copy of that copy. It looks okay, but it's getting worse, right? Yeah. And after some time, you're going to get shittier copies.
Yeah.
Right? So you can only go so far before you get to copy mutation. Well, that's the same thing that happens in cells. You make a copy of a cell, make a copy of that cell, and a copy of that cell. You're going to have, eventually, you go out far enough, you're going to start to have mutations that can lead to cancer. So your body wants to protect against this. It wants to say, well, let's say we only have about 60 copies to make. Well, so the first 30 copies, let's call that procreation stage. We want to get out there, we want to look really youthful, and we want to have kids, and we want to procreate. But then when you're about 32 years old,
what I am now.
Switches, and then all of a sudden you start noticing gray hairs, and it's what's happening is your cells are saying, let's optimize for longevity.
Yeah.
So it would be like, okay, this cell died over there. I could, as a cell next to that little empty space, I could say, well, there's some space over there. Should I copy? Should I copy myself, mitosis, make a copy, and another cell would go over there, and that will fill in that space. But I'm actually past that middle stage there, so I'm not optimizing for longevity. I'm going to wait a little bit. Wrinkles. That's how it works. Yeah. So you could, and there's something that regulates this. It's in the cell. It's called telomerase. The shorter your DNA capsids get, those shoelace ends, every time you make a copy, it's like a fuse. It snips off some. Snip.
So what are you doing or taking, or what is actually helping you to kind of biohack this?
So first of all, I have to create a feedback loop on, well, where are my telomeres? So that's important. Yeah. So, I mean, you can do that every few years. You could try to see where, there's some tests out there. I use SpectraCell. There's other ones that I've heard are even better. I don't know. I haven't researched. But it's important to whatever one you use, you kind of want to keep maybe using the same one so that you can compare more easily, get the baseline. Yes, exactly. So that's one feedback loop you can do. But I would say arguably what's most important is really making sure that your micronutrients are in good shape. So that's making sure that you have all the vitamins you need. I have a list. I can share it with you after the show of
that'd be fascinating. Yeah, we could
post that or whatever.
Post that, yeah.
Yep. Some of them are simple, like a lot of people are vitamin D deficient. A lot of people are magnesium deficient, like 90% of magnesium deficiency in the US apparently. You're drinking coffee, all these things deplete magnesium.
And then the doses that are recommended by most MDs are like criminally low, and the research is often outdated, and then they also need co-supplements. So like if you're taking vitamin D, for example, you should also take K2, because K2 helps the absorption rate of the D3. And if you're taking a high level of D3 and you're not taking K2, then you're not absorbing it. So
there's all of these weird things out there, right? So then how does the average person deal with this now? I would argue that the average person can just do a couple of things and get 80% of the benefit. Let's say you get a good multivitamin, and then I would say that also on top of the good multivitamin, you want to take glutathione. So glutathione is top antioxidant. It recycles vitamin C and E 20,000 times or so. So the way we remove oxidation or free radicals from our body is kind of like a conveyor belt, where in the core, it's like we got to grab onto them, and then we got to take them out, maybe take them through the liver, we got to get rid of them. But
there's also the precursor NAC, where you can actually take the NAC, which is a precursor to the glutathione, and then that gives your body the ability to produce more on its own. But then you can also take the liposomal form of glutathione itself and bypass that whole process.
So there's, again, so for most folks at home, they're like, oh my God, this is so crazy. What the hell? I don't have time for this. So again, like you can just take a multivitamin, get some glutathione or some NAC.
It's on Amazon. You don't have
get it on Amazon. Super simple. But like the number one thing you could do for yourself is just take the glutathione every day, or the NAC. Take it every day, plus the multi, and you're going to have 80% of the value. If you really want to hack it. And that'll at least kind of pause your aging. Dramatically. Like seriously pause your aging.
And it helps with detoxification and like just...
Heyo, you got a great tech story you want to get published? Maybe something about bots taking over Twitter, or how Bitcoin actually works? Or maybe you just have a story about how to build a great software or a great team. Get your expertise published on Hacker Noon. Email us stories@hackernoon.com, and a real human will review your submission.
So you got two problems in aging. One is your cells oxidize, they die, and then you have to make a copy. That's not good. So every time you have to make a copy, you're going through your 60 copies on average, different parts of your body are different numbers. But once you get closer, once you're getting past the 30, somewhere in the middle, your body's like, let's optimize for longevity. So I'm going to make fewer copies, and I'm going to be older. I'm literally going to be older. Things are just not going to work as well. The more copies you get, so you don't want that. But then there's an additional factor that multiplies it even more. And now this is where we're getting, this part is known, and also be careful about very clear about what part I'm adding here. So it's very well known that if you have cortisol in your blood, if you're stressed and you have chronic stress, that can lead to aging. And how does that work? It works by, remember back to the capsid, the telomeres. If you have cortisol in your blood and you're stressed all the time, instead of it just snipping off like maybe a little bit, it snips off a big chunk. So it's like this person, and here's where I'm going to add a little bit. This is my theory. Just like in cells, there's this thing called apoptosis. It's called cellular suicide. A cellular cell, it's like, I'm not doing well.
Yeah.
I'm going to kill myself. I'm just going to get rid of myself. I'm going to mark myself for deletion, basically. And then, then white blood cells come by and eat it up and see you later. That's a good cooperative strategy for your body surviving. It's good if they identify, hey, I'm not doing so well, get rid of myself and make more room for other cells that are doing better. I think the same thing happens at, and that's very well documented. That's known in the world. But I think the same thing happens at the human level or at the tribal level. So and I think it happens through cortisol. So if you're stressed out all the time, imagine you're back at the hunter-gatherer days or whatever, and you're not doing well for whatever reason, your cortisol is going to be higher. It's going to be an indicator that things aren't going well.
Yeah.
So what happens? Well, we're going to make you age faster. We're going to make you age faster, and then you're going to have diseases, and you'll die. And that will give space for the people.
Diseases, if you also get a disease, that also can increase your cortisol levels as well, because then your body stays in a constant state of stress.
Absolutely, yeah. So basically, if things aren't good and they're stressed, let's cut off the telomeres faster and basically make you age faster. Then you die, and it makes room for the people that were chilling and not having the cortisol stress.
And what strategies have you used to reduce cortisol?
I'm still learning, but there's stress management. I mean, try not to let the stress really get to you. Try not to there's a million ways you can do that. Okay, it could be meditation. You could even, I think there's, Flora is one thing I've read about. It helps reduce the cortisol levels in your blood. So there's a bunch of ways. I mean, you could go and read books on stress reduction, but if you have a little bit of stress that goes up and down, that's good. That's good. That creates resilience. Yeah. But if it's a chronic stress, that will kill you. And if just being around other people, I think maybe it's the serotonin, there's the oxytocin, all that stuff, that says to your body things are good. Yeah. I think they just heard
isolation.
Isolation is the number one killer, even more than cigarettes, apparently.
Exactly.
Ted talked about this recently. I just read.
There's a lot of data to suggest that isolation is probably one of the worst things for you. Yeah. But it is interesting, and human touch also has there's a huge correlation there as well.
I think so. Yeah.
So, and I mean, this even, this isn't new information. Like, babies that don't get touched by their parents don't do as well.
Right.
Like, we've known that for a very long time. Right. This is not new information. So the same thing is true of the elderly. The same thing is true of, every range of population, like human beings, just like your dog or your cat, you like to be pet.
Right. Exactly.
That's what it comes down to.
So if you want to live a long time, be around other people, reduce your cortisol, make sure that you're getting enough of the micronutrients that you need. Like, you can do micronutrient tests that test what's in your cells, not in your serum, not in your blood, but what's in the cell, what's dissolved in. So you do these things, reduce the cortisol, have physical touch with other people or emotional connection or whatever it is, and that will all at least pause their aging, or in my case, I believe what they're just learning the last couple of years, they didn't think it was possible, but your telomeres can actually grow. They can actually grow.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's why when I tested a few years ago, theoretically, I mean, I'm going to get to test it again, we'll see. But it's fascinating. Is that really happening after all the things I read? And I really just started doing all of those things and really testing, getting feedback loops on my micronutrients. Every year, test them, 30 different micronutrients.
It's kind of like how, when I was younger, the going theory was nerves can't regenerate.
Right.
Now, in 2018, it's of course we have neurogenesis and nerves regenerate. We'd probably die if they didn't. So, there's definitely, phases as we learn more scientifically to be able to understand some of these things. So that's fascinating that these things can actually potentially grow.
Yeah.
So you can actually measure, directly what's happening and how that correlates to your aging and how you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. So like it's really blowing my mind. The really good micronutrient tests that you can get where you can really see where am I in the deficient range? Am I in, SpectraCell is I think a pretty good one, or that one's worked well for me. There are others. It's like $300, $400, something like that.
I would argue probably GI health is probably also critical to this. So that's where you get into diet and diet modification and those kinds of things, because if you're not if you're not eating the right micronutrients, and if your digestive system and your digestive lining aren't functioning properly, and you've got, there's some controversy about leaky gut, but whatever. If you've got leaky gut, if your intestinal lining is compromised or there's something going on there, then your ability to absorb micronutrients and bring them into your cells isn't functioning properly.
So, and then you could get tricked because you go to your doctor, you go to whatever your doctor is, and you're like, hey, test my whatever. All they do is they test your serum. That may work for some vitamins, but most not. You want to test what is dissolved into your cells. So the SpectraCell, the way they do their test is they basically take 10,000 of your lymphocytes, put them in a bath of acid, and see how far they go. And then they'll do the same thing in a bath of acid, but with also all the micronutrients. And they'll see how far that goes, how many copies they can make. And then they'll say, okay, we'll do the same thing, bath of acid with the micronutrients, but this time we're going to remove D and see how far they can copy. So then you can start to control for how many copies could be made and compared to the national average or natural graph of of everyone in the country.
So personally for you, what have you noticed from doing all of this?
So many things. Like there were things in my health, or things on my joints, or my knee, or something. I have a messed up knee, or things in my skin. Like because I'm vegetarian, I've been vegetarian my whole life. If I drank too much coffee, it seemed like I couldn't quite correlate it, but it was like if I was drinking too much coffee or something, my lips would get really like dry and painful. And then I started to figure out, it's vitamin C and E, and I was really low on those. And then once I started figuring out the things that I was low on, I was like 3 or 4 things I was low on.
Coffee's a diuretic, so it was just flushing your system every time you're drinking coffee. Yeah. And then if you had vitamin deficiencies, that makes it 10 times worse.
Or vitamin B, I didn't know, because of being vegetarian, it's the B12 is a common one you can be deficient in. And then I would feel like little weird pins and needles, like sometimes. And it was like when I was traveling a lot, not getting enough sleep, like all this stuff.
And then it matters how you get your B12 too.
Totally.
Like I personally use the sublingual because it goes straight into the bloodstream. You bypass the digestive system.
Yes.
Whereas if you consume it, then it has to get processed by the liver, and it has to go through this whole process, and then most of it gets excreted, and you get no benefit.
Right.
So most of the time, when you can do like a tincture or anything that gets something directly into your bloodstream, that's the way to go. Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's so much to learn here. A great book is the Gut Brain Continuum, or something like that. That helps you understand that your gut is really a big brain. Like 80-90% of the serotonin in the body is actually in your gut.
Yeah.
That's why probably when you hear about people taking psilocybin or something like that, and they get all like weird in their gut, it's because their gut is actually tripping. Yeah. So they're actually, it's all like weird feeling because you're probably hallucinating in your gut. Literally.
Well, and if you think about what the brain actually is and what the gut actually is, it's just fatty, soft tissues. I mean, they're literally made up and composed of the same things.
Yeah.
So, and then there is a brain-gut connection. So they're communicating on a regular basis.
Like the biggest superhighway of nerves is vagus nerve, something like that. And that's the brain and the gut talking and doing big data correlation on you eat this thing, if things didn't feel good, don't eat it anymore. Or you ate this thing, your B12 went up, so therefore crave it.
Heyo, you got a great tech story you want to get published? Maybe something about bots taking over Twitter or how Bitcoin actually works? Or maybe you just have a story about how to build a great software or a great team. Get your expertise published on Hacker Noon. Email us stories@hackernoon.com and a real human will review your submission.
And inflammation is also a major component to this. So you can eat foods that actually fight inflammation. And then you can eat foods that actually cause inflammation. So, I would argue that actually one of the number one causes of depression in the So if you're from a health standpoint, not necessarily a psychological standpoint, but physically, is inflammation causes depression. If your brain is inflamed, you will experience the sensation of depression.
Absolutely.
Without any other variables necessarily.
Right. So inflammation, it causes, I think, gaining weight.
Yes.
So that I keep hearing, and a lot more research seems to be showing up around this, is that a lot of weight gain has to do with the wrong bacteria getting fed in your gut. The wrong bacteria, when they're fed, they produce toxins. Toxins in your body make your body want to protect it. And you want to, how does your body protect the organs in your body? Well, you put on fat. Fat buffers.
It's an insulator.
It's an insulator of acid. Yes.
And I'm glad you brought up the gut flora as well, because from my own research, like gut flora has such an impact on overall health and the immune system. It's like absolutely critical. And the problem is like we live in this world of antibiotics where like if you do eat meat, like most of the animals have been exposed to antibiotics. So you're actually consuming antibiotics when you're consuming those meat products. So that has a direct impact on your gut flora.
Did you see the study that just came out? They said in Canada, those children who were running around on the floor where they use antibiotic sprays, it was killing some of their good flora. So you basically have a situation where the good flora get killed, the bad stuff that creates inflammation and then it therefore causes you to put on weight. That stuff is allowed to bloom. It's not kept in check. So antibacterial stuff is a mixed bag.
It is. I mean, when I was 4 years old, I got pretty sick and they dosed me with broad spectrum antibiotics. And here I am at 32 and I'm still figuring things out because repopulating that gut flora and like trying to keep it in balance, like the number of supplements and things that I have to do to keep it balanced is crazy. Right. Because naturally my body's ability to be able to do that was compromised at an early age.
One of my really good friends, this person was, a gut of steel forever. And then a few years ago, suddenly it was like everything was totally messed up. Couldn't figure out what was going on. So many tests, so many different scopes and Finally, after seeing just the right specialist figured out, you have a bloom of something bad in your upper digestive tract. And here's a particular antibiotic to kill that thing, all back to normal. But that was like years of suffering.
And then there's also the other issue that can happen is also Candida, which is a fungus. So if the good bacteria is removed because of antibiotics, then it allows fungal infections to potentially be able to move into the digestive system and cause Candida, which causes all kinds of rashes and skin conditions and even affects mental capacity. And then if you try to kill it, it releases toxins and it's basically like getting a hangover. So horrible thing to go through. So there's all these different factors, when it comes to, the digestive system, the gut flora, are you absorbing your macronutrients? Like, and all of these factors overall lead to your greater health.
One thing I've seen, like when you're reading the China study, one thing that kind of stood out to me was that he said, if you, like humans are built pretty solidly. Like we've had years of drinking, contaminated water and wherever, millions of years, let's say. So we are so resilient when it comes to just having toxins in our environment. I think it seems like we're pretty resilient, but we just got to get enough water. Simply water, enough water. Once I learned that, I just started drinking so much water per day. Not too much, but micronutrient water too, I think is a good thing.
I was going to say there's different things you can play with water as well, as how the water is distilled. Now they've got water that's, more alkaline. You can play with alkalization. You can also play with, ionization as well. Is it positively or negatively charged? And then also adding other, minerals to the water and that kind of thing as well.
A lot of water just is mineral free or doesn't have a great balance of like the minerals that we grew up, or our genes grew up millions of years ago drinking.
And I can guarantee you a million years ago, they weren't putting fluoride in the water and all these toxins and
except if you're in India and maybe in New Mexico where they had fluoride in the water just naturally. So.
But those populations didn't live very long.
Native American, rather. Sorry, not Indian. I should not say Indian. Native Americans. Apologize. So there's one other thing I wanted to bring up, and that is pH balancing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big, highly contested thing on the internet, I think. And some people are like, okay, you can drink some pH increased water. You can drink alkaline water. That could be good for you. Then some people are like, that's crazy. You just breathe more. You breathe. It's breathing that is exhaling carbon dioxide, and that is what it removes the acidity from your body. Just breathe. So, exercising helps you exhale, and that's good. Yeah. But I think there's a couple in my research, and I still can't figure out. So if anybody out there has a better idea for me, I would love to hear it. And that is that, you hear about eating alkaline. It's like, if you have a potassium, it's lemon water, so it has potassium in it, and that helps you balance your pH better. There's all of these minerals that can help you balance your pH better. I've noticed my pH balances with micronutrients a lot better, a lot faster, like if you're doing pH testing. But I think that the whole just breathe more makes sense to a degree, but you're still sitting there with acidity until you've breathed more, until you've had enough breath to, when you have acid reflux maybe. Or
I've seen, and I've had conversations with a couple doctors about this, and I've done my own research on it as well, and it's mixed because you might need acidity. So certain, especially in women, certain organs, the bladder, having a level of acidity to potentially kill off bad pathogens is potentially a good thing. Whereas if you go to alkaline, and then there could be an environment that could lead to the wrong gut flora or the wrong bacteria to be able to flourish in a more alkaline environment. At the same time, though, alkaline environments can also kill other types of bacteria. So it's this it's this weird balance of.
It's like, so I would distinguish it between, are you getting your hydrogen ions, your pH, your alkalinity, which is just hydrogen ions, are you getting that from the breathing? Are you exhaling them from the breathing? Or are you creating those from the breathing, exhaling acidity? Or are you getting it directly? So you could say that alkaline water is like getting it directly. You're getting hydrogen ions put into your body directly versus I'm taking something that has the right potassium that helps balance electrolytes better, and the better balanced electrolytes allows me to more efficiently get the acidity to be breathed out and then balance. So there's like a direct balancing and there's a indirect balancing, and that part is never talked about online.
There's also an inflammation component as well. So alkalinity can actually fight inflammation. There was a recent research study that said actually using baking soda, which is highly alkaline, you add it to water, and it's actually just as effective, if not more effective, than ibuprofen. So most people probably are taking ibuprofen, which is actually really bad for the liver. It can actually degrade the intestinal lining.
Ibuprofen is a Band-Aid. If you're still acidic, and then you take ibuprofen to stop the inflammation, that's just kind of stopping a symptom.
Correct.
And that's good, but you're still acidic. So you're still having other problems.
If you were to go drink a little bit of baking soda and some water and add a little bit of lemon and drink that down, you'll get the same or better inflammation address response and actually solve the root of the issue potentially.
So the number one thing that when me doing the pH testing, you do it under your tongue, you do it there are various places. I always say get a digital pH meter. There's some on Amazon you get that are like the $60 to $80 ones are the ones you want. The ones that are like $30, they don't work very well. So you get one of those. You can easily test. It's wet and dry. You can test whatever. But the number one thing that makes my body alkaline and just perfectly balanced and awesome and feeling great is dark green leaves, salad, like kale and broccoli, Brussels sprouts, all that stuff. My God, like nothing else. Like nothing else. And it blew me away. I mean, I always loved salad, but now I'm like, that is why people, it's literally because you're getting something that's living, it's alive, and it has hydrogen ions. It takes energy from the sun and photosynthesis to get the hydrogen ions together and hold on to them. It has to be alive to hold on to them. Otherwise, it spills into the environment. You cook something, I think it's spilling into the environment. And that's what directly balances your pH, keeps you at a place where your body doesn't have to work hard to balance that pH. Like if you're eating lots of grains and meats and animal products and cheese, that stuff all has to be balanced by breathing enough. And in the time that between when it's unbalanced and balanced, your body is literally undergoing acidity. So that's how you age, I think. That's my take on it.
Hey, hacker. Sorry to interrupt this great podcast. It's David Smook, founder and CEO of Hacker Noon, and we're raising money for the first time, and we're doing it from the people. If you want to buy shares in Hacker Noon, visit hackernoonshares.com. Help us make the best place for tech professionals to publish.
Definitely probably a factor. So this is the Hacker Noon podcast. Obviously, we've talked about ego hacking.
Yeah.
We've now talked about biohacking, but you're also a hacker. So what's another example of some time that you've hacked something in your life?
Sure, like a really simple one. This is a pretty fun one. Is I used to be a computer programmer for 15 years, and a lot of web stuff and database and scaling and stuff like that. But early on in the days, it was before CouchSurfing existed. But I was kind of curious: is this a good idea? Would other people like this idea? I stumbled across the University of Iceland student directory, and I had to get out. I was like, I could email some people and ask if I could stay on their couch, but I needed a name to type in. So the only Icelandic name I knew was Bjork. So I typed in Bjork, and I was able to get on a bunch of Bjork Stevens daughters and stuff. I figured out the last name is the first name in these Scandinavian countries, in Iceland especially. The person's last name is their father's first name, with son or daughter added. It's kind of fun. So then I was able to get all these Icelandic names and type in all these people's names. I wrote a little script that put names in there and automatically took what I got out in the previous. And I got 1,500 names and email addresses. Put those into a little database and then created a mail merge. Dear Bjorn, I'm Casey. I'm coming to Iceland. Here's all about me. Here's my links to my website and my personal philosophy pictures. Basically a couchsurfing profile, right?
Yeah.
In an email. Talk about an MVP, super simple, right? And thanks, Bjorn, Casey. Then I had the opposite problem of not knowing where to stay. Super expensive going to Iceland back in the day. It's like $100 for a hostel for a night. And then I had the opposite problem where I had between 50 and 100 people say, yes, come stay on my couch. We'll go to my grandfather's house in the countryside. We'll drink vodka under the stars and look at this kind of adventure. So now what do I do?
Yeah.
Now I had too many options. So that's where hacking could lead. Careful.
Too many options.
Too many options.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. Do you have any final thoughts on, biohacking, ego hacking, just kind of wrap things up for the audience?
Sure. Like if you had to tie it all together, I think it's important if you're the kind of person who you might see in your identity, oh, no, I it's not me. I don't do that. I'm not, think about your identity, your ego. How are you programmed like that? Maybe you didn't get some good feedback on that. Maybe you, in the past, I'll say in the past, maybe you didn't get a good feeling about that. But if you can get someone in your life who loves you to help you hack yourself, to get that I care about my health. I love my health. I want to have the idea to live in a healthy way for a long time. Get somebody to help you get that kernel, that little seed, that little nugget of identity, of ego that is about health, that is about health hacking. And that will grow. You'll start to see little things in your environment all over the place that will start to corroborate and bolster this feeling of this identity of I care about my health, I love myself, and all that good stuff. So you can combine them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And where can people find you?
Sure. You could go to CaseyFenton.com if you just want to connect with me directly. You could also go to the CouchSurfing story if you want to get a copy of the book when it comes out. You can also go to UpStock.io. UpStock.io is where I am working on a pretty big project. It's worker equity as a service. So so many people out there were suffering because we can't work on projects with people and give them ownership in a way that's powerful and people believe in. They have to suffer through these stock options, this crap.
Sweat equity.
Yes. So this this is a sweat equity system that is what the Fortune 1000s are using.
Yeah.
But instead of paying $1 million for them, you can just get a software as a service for a lot less. Yeah. So
cool.
Invite people over there to chat with me if you're interested in equity. And equity systems. I love talking about that stuff too. Like, how do we get?
We might have to have another episode and have you on again.
Yeah, so that would be about organizational.
I know your schedule's been kind of crazy.
It
took a little while to get this figured out, but maybe we can get you on the show again.
Sure.
Later
Thanks,
on.
Trent. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure. And thank you again for coming on and sharing all this knowledge with everyone.
Yeah, and thank you for making the show so great and inspiring so many people across the world with your interesting and varied topics. I think a lot of people brings a smile to their face, and it has a meaning. I think the number of lives you've affected I can't count that many, can't count that high, but it's
Thank you for the ego hack.
Yeah, sure. just saying it as it is. I mean, I'm saying things that are true.
Yeah.
So again, I could say an infinite number of negative or positive things about anybody. Let's just make sure people know what we appreciate about them.
Agreed.
So that they can have that ego banking, so that they can give it their all.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and share this knowledge with everyone, and hopefully we can get it to a lot of people.
All right.
Awesome.
Cheers. Thank you.
This concludes another episode of the Hacker Noon podcast. I'm your host, Trent Lipinski. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on social media. You can also find us at hackernoon.com and podcast.hackernoon.com for more episodes. Thank you for listening.